I am disappointed by a number of prosecutions that haven't been brought. I think there's a number of prosecutions that can be brought in the area of the SBA fraud, the bribery and kickbacks, election fraud, and the sex cases.
So that was Fritz Scheller today. He's the attorney for Joel Greenberg. Joel Greenberg is the former close associate and wingman, if you will, of Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Today, Greenberg was sentenced by a federal judge to 11 years in prison for sex trafficking of a minor and other crimes. Meanwhile, Matt Gaetz, who's also being investigated by the same Justice Department for sex trafficking with a minor, has not been charged over a year and a half into this investigation. He denies any wrongdoing. But as the New York Times reports, Greenberg cooperated with DOJ in several investigations, including the one into Matt Gaetz, in hopes of a lesser prison sentence. According to the Times, Fritz Scheller has complained that the Justice Department has not charged those who Mr. Greenberg implicated in the very same sex trafficking with a minor for which he was sentenced today. Any prosecution would have highlighted the benefits of Greenberg's cooperation when it came to sentencing him. Joining our coverage, Mike Schmidt, New York Times Washington correspondent and an MSNBC national security contributor who's reporting we read from. Harry Littman is still with us. Mike, take us into what Greenberg's attorney is alleging in terms of cases that have not been brought by the Garland DOJ.
I think what he's trying to say is that the Justice Department was able to make several cases out of information that was provided by Joel Greenberg. It also, in court filings, laid out how Joel Greenberg's sex trafficking of a minor was a major crime and a terrible thing that happened, and excoriated him for it. I think what he's saying is that if the Justice Department is going to such great lengths to do and say that about his client, why aren't they doing that with other individuals? And it's a bit of an unusual tactic from a defense lawyer to so openly criticize the Justice Department. But I think what Scheller was trying to do here is he was trying to make as big an argument as possible to bring down the sentence that Greenberg was going to receive. And to do that, he had to show that his cooperation bore a lot of fruits. And indeed, the judge who sentenced him today said that he had never seen the amount of cooperation that Greenberg had provided in his 22 years on the bench. The judge also said that he had never seen such a high rate of criminality from an individual than he did in Joel Greenberg.
And we should tell our viewers we're going to have a chance to speak to Mr. Scheller as well in a couple minutes, and so we'll press him on that. Mike, in your reporting on this, you write this: Mr. Greenberg has told federal authorities that he witnessed Mr. Gaetz have sex with the 17-year-old girl and that she was paid. In documents filed in connection with Mr. Greenberg's sentencing, the Justice Department said he had, quote, provided truthful and timely information that led to the charging of at least 4 other people and provided substantial assistance on other matters that the government would address only in a sealed filing. Do you have any sense of what those other matters are, and if Mr. Greenberg is viewed as credible and witnessed Mr. Gaetz, quote, having sex with the 17-year-old girl, I believe it's the same one, and having evidence that she was paid, why Mr. Gaetz hasn't been charged with the same crimes that Mr. Greenberg was sentenced for today?
Well, we don't know. We don't know why Gaetz hasn't been charged. We do know that bringing a case, as we have seen throughout the past few years, against a politician in a high-profile matter is complicated, and it's complicated for the Justice Department. And the Justice Department, as you've seen, has moved very sort of methodically and, at times, according to its critics, slowly on the issues of politicians, because they want to do a painstaking job to make sure that they follow the evidence and that the evidence is there to bring a case. It is, while we're all supposed to be treated equally under the law, it is more difficult to bring a prosecution against a high-profile politician, a member of Congress, and someone who has allied himself so closely with Donald Trump. And I think that if the department were to bring a case and lose a case, it would have enormous consequences. So the decision to bring a charge in that sense against someone like Matt Gaetz is a much weightier decision than when the government had an enormous amount of evidence against Joel Greenberg. He was a local tax collector in Florida and could get him to flip and cooperate. And he had a lawyer who realized that the only pathway to reduce his sentence time was to cooperate. Greenberg was looking at up to 3 decades in prison for his crimes. He was sentenced to 11 years. That's a significant departure. That was due to his cooperation.
Mike, you've also reported, and I believe Cassidy Hutchinson testified publicly to Matt Gaetz's pursuit of a pardon from Donald Trump in his final days and weeks in office. Do we know what Matt Gaetz thought he needed to be pardoned for?
I think that our understanding of it that Gaetz was seeking a blanket pardon, a pardon for anything that the department might ever be able to bring against him. And if I recall our reporting correctly, Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, and other people at the White House and the Justice Department knew this was a terrible idea. If you remember, Trump went to extraordinary lengths to give out pardons and gave them to a lot of people that would not have received a pardon if the pardon office at the Justice Department was in charge of giving out the pardons. But Trump never went as far as giving someone a blanket preemptive pardon in the way that Gaetz was looking for. He was essentially looking for a true get-out-of-jail-free card for anything that he may have done. And if you remember on Gaetz is part of a group of congressmen and Republicans who were encouraging the president's efforts to overturn the election.
I want to bring into our conversation the attorney we've referenced and played some sound from today, Fritz Scheller. Fritz, we showed some of your, is distress the right word to use, that you articulated about evidence that your client, Joel Greenberg, had produced in cases that had not been made. What is your theory of why that is?
Distress, that's a great word. I think actually it was more frustration. I think I have a special insight into this case. Mike made a really good point that Mr. Greenberg's path was a cooperation. And so in that regard, for the last 2 years or so, I think, as the judge noted, he's provided the most significant cooperation that that court has ever seen. I think there is a strategy in the Justice Department to bring prosecutions and go from bottom up. But what is often the case, though, is sometimes they stay at the bottom. And what concerns me about Mr. Greenberg's case is he's easy pickings. He's an easy prosecution. His conduct was in the open. It was notorious. It was blatant. And the problem is, in such a situation, that for a defense attorney, obviously, you have no other choice. There's no trial there. He needs to cooperate. But what the Justice Department really needs to do is have the resolve to go after the bigger fishes and the bigger fish. And here's the problem. When you prosecute the tax collector, you have a false sense of security and complacency, that everything is fine, justice has been achieved, and we move on. Really, what I have seen is there's a more insidious backdrop to Mr. Greenberg, and he's only the tip of the spear, so to speak. And hopefully the Department of Justice will show the fortitude and the resolve, because some of the things he's cooperated against is not really the sex prosecution that got a lot of press, but the election interference, the election fraud, the public corruption, I think, is a greater threat to our democracy. And that's why I'm frustrated.
Can you take us through the evidence that your client provided on each? And I guess I only raised the sex trafficking because Mike's story points out that, and I don't know how this goes, but Mr. Greenberg told federal authorities he witnessed Gaetz have sex with a 17-year-old girl and that she was paid. And it seems that in today's sentencing, that carried some of the years that your client will serve in prison. So just tell us about the evidence that your client provided and take us through each of those buckets: the sex trafficking with a minor, the dangers to democracy, election fraud, and other crimes.
Yes. So, as I outlined in my response to the government's 5K motion, and what I articulated more forcefully in court yesterday is that Mr. Greenberg participated in a series of about 15 proffers, both personally or in person or in writing. There was about 40 emails with documents, including financial documents, receipts, photographs, and so on. And that goes into each one of the buckets. If you want me to break it down, we have Uber receipts, we have Venmo receipts, we have hotel receipts. In terms of the sex prosecution, we also have flight data. And then there's multiple witnesses. So it's not, I think there was a story in the Washington Post, which was a little bit misleading, that said, well, it comes down to the credibility of the victim and Mr. Greenberg, and they have credibility problems. There's a lot more witnesses than just the minor and Mr. Greenberg. And credibility of witnesses is at issue in every single case. But there's multiple witnesses that corroborate Mr. Greenberg's information, and there's documents that corroborate his information.